Hello and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan.
I'm Brian.
And thank you for joining us for this crowdfunding preview for Pandora Celeste.
So Alan, why haven't you opened the box?
Because it's Pandora's box.
It's Pandora's box. I think you should open the box.
Okay. So obviously the reason why we've got this on the table here this way, and first of all we must say everything you see here and throughout this video are going to be prototype components. And very much so the box is. But the box is quite special, and the reason why it's here as it is, because when you open up the box, I'm going to just make sure I get this all sorted, you will see that the Pandora Celeste ship is already formed in front of us, which is quite a novel idea, and it's going to be used for the main sort of gameplay of the missions that we're going to be going on. And the idea is about getting straight into the game as quick as possible. There's going to be a few tokens that we're going to have to put out as we go through, but having this box fold out the way it does can get you straight into the game, particularly if you've packed it away with some of the components already in it. So tell us a bit about the thing, Ron.
So this is, as they say, an homage to classic sci-fi horror kind of literature movies. So the basic principle, the Pandora Celeste is a spaceship. You are a crew on a spaceship. You've just awoken from cryosleep, and the ship's got some kind of emergency going on with it. You've got to try and sort out the emergency, and unbeknownst to you, there are also some kind of alien nasties on the ship as well. So as well as trying to fight the ship, and because the ship's going to try and protect itself, so it's got a bit of an AI in there or something, so it's going to maybe open the airlocks or something. So you've got to try and stop that happening in time. There's a countdown tracker, which is down here, while trying to avoid the nasties as well. And so everything is going against you, basically.
So the ship's got its own agenda where it wants to protect its cargo, and you're not its cargo.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. And so there's going to be some of these things crawling out of the ship and out of the woodwork. So
yes. Yeah, making your life even harder than it already is.
Okay. So the sort of anatomy of turns and how that's going to work for you. You're going to have a scenario that you're going to start off with, and as Brian explained, the very first scenario, prologue scenario, is going to be waking up from that cryosleep and going to find and investigate what's going on around you. But then once you've got that sort of bit of story out of the way, you're going to start off pretty much as this turn sequence is going to show you. We're going to start off with the crew round. So our crew that has woken up is going to be walking around trying to investigate what's going on with that objective going off. First scenario, alarm bells going off for us to get through into the sick bay. You'll notice that we have got these decks already set up for our crew. Now, once we've only got 4 crew out, I believe the game does play up to 6 players.
Yeah, I'll play up to 6 players, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to have a different sort of number of characters depending upon what the play count is. So you can do it true solo with just 1 character, or you can sort of double up with some extra characters to make it through. Obviously, having a few more people might make it a little bit easier, or it might make it a little bit more treacherous, and we'll get to that towards the end. But we've got these decks that we're going to be using to sort of take actions. And starting with the prologue, we're going to start with 4 very specific cards for each of our crew members. Now, they are slightly asymmetric. Whilst they've got very much similar icons as you go through it, there are going to be certain people that are going to have slightly different cards in their deck, which will give them access to different icons and different abilities. For instance, Cap can be a jack of all trades. He's going to be able to use their card for multiple different actions. And you'll see here on the cards that you've got these different actions that are up in the top corner. This is going to be what you're going to be choosing to sort of do on your turn. And on your turn, you're going to take one of your cards and you're going to play it. And you're going to be able to do the thing on that card. Because we've got 2 columns here, it's going to be in either or section. So, for instance, here, we can either go up into the vents or we can take a move. Here, we've got 2 actions that we can take, which will be to pick something up or to creep. Here, though, we've got 2 actions on either side that we could choose from. So this is going to be using a keypad or an unlock, a move, or unlock and pick up. So we've got that little bit of choice with that. With some of these more powerful cards, particularly with the jack of all trades, we're going to be able to only get one sort of option out of them, but they are going to be incredibly versatile. But the cards that you have in your starting deck are not going to be the only cards that you're going to get. As you go throughout the ship, you're going to start waking up from that sort of cryo sleep fog.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to go through some of these memories. So if Brian can pass me over some of the memories.
So yeah, basically, as you walk through the room, you can sort of, things remind you of, as you're waking up again, you can remember things. And as you can basically pick these icons up, flip it over, and see what the memory is. And then you find the corresponding number on the memory card.
Yeah, we're not going to go through these in too much detail because we don't want to spoil what's going to happen overall, and we're going to try and do this as spoiler-free as we can. And so you'll see a couple of these memories are going to give us access to different icons you may not have already seen in the cards that we've shown you, icons you may not have already had in your deck. But ultimately, they are going to bolster that deck of cards that you've got, which gives you more opportunities to do certain actions, and which are going to be very similar for any sort of action-driven game. Move around, unlock doors, fight, power up parts of the ship, and sort of investigate certain areas. So they're going to be fairly familiar actions, but what they'll also do is enable you to then take some wounds. And we're going to get onto combat a little bit later, but the main premise around the wound system is going to be you're going to be losing some of those cards from your hand or from your deck as you go through. As I said, coming back right round to it, you're going to play one card on your turn, then the next person in turn order is going to go. You'll notice here we've got the first player marker, which is also the first target marker. Play a card, passes it on round and round, and keep going round and round until at last point somebody passes. That person that then passes finishes up their round, and every other player in turn order gets to play 2 cards at once for it. But once they've played that, that is them out of the round. So somebody might pass really early, so there's not many actions going on. Again, treachery is abound. We'll get to that a little bit later. Once we've done all of those actions, we'll move on to the next phase.
So what you'll be doing when you're playing a card is you're actually playing it face up on your discard pile. And the reason for that is because once everyone's finished, you'll pick up your cards and you'll have a look at this coloured bar at the bottom. And this is how much noise that action has made. And the person who has the most noise, they're the ones that the nasties are going to home in on. So you'll have this first player marker and you'll become the first target. So whoever got the most noise, they'll become the first target, and they'll be the one that the nasties will focus on, and they'll run towards in preference to other things. What else happens between that round is that any red doors that you've opened, any sort of security doors, they'll slam shut, which might be a good thing if you're on the side of it opposite the nasties. But if you're trying to get somewhere to safe and one of your colleagues is trying to follow you in, they might be trapped outside it, so it can be good or bad.
Yeah, so again, you might want to try and organise where you're going to go and when you're going to go. Yeah. One of our playthroughs, I made a little bit of mistake, and Brian used it to his advantage. So be aware of that, of what you're doing and when that's going to come up in the turn order.
Okay, so once you've chosen who the first target is, then you have a nasty round. So any nasties that you've uncovered on the board, and you'll basically discover those by walking into a room, flipping over a tile, and it might be a nasty. You'll take the nasty card from the deck with the same number, and it'll go into the nasty active nasty area there. And then in turn, you'll walk through the active nasty area, and based on what's happening in the round sequence, so not every nasty moves in every round, you'll flip over a card, and you'll basically decide what it does based on whether it's a big nasty or a little nasty. And so this one, for example, says move to attack the nearest target to this room. So, or they'll follow their instincts, in which case they'll go towards the first target and ignore everybody else in the room where they start. But if they bump into anybody on the way, they'll attack them on the way. And they'll basically move. They'll have a movement speed as well. So this one can move 1 room at a time, but there's some that can move 4 rooms at a time, and they'll easily catch up with you quite quickly. If they get to you, they'll generally attack you. And although if you discover one by walking into a room, they'll ignore you because they're easily distracted, unless you either attack them or try to leave the room without sneaking away, in which case they'll spot you and they'll try and bite you.
Yeah, and there's certain times when that being that first target is really not going to do you any favours, because they will sometimes attack that in that room. But obviously on the combat side of it, when they do look to attack you, you'll be flipping another card from the nasty deck, and depending upon whether they are
a big nasty or a little nasty, they'll use the top balloon. And if they're little nasty, they'll use the bottom balloon. So in this case, this little one here would have missed me, yeah, or missed the person. Yeah, and same when you attack them. If you've got a weapon, you'll look at the top bar. If you don't have a weapon, just your fists, you use the bottom bar. You use the same deck, flip it over, and when the deck runs out, you shuffle it up and restack the deck.
So we're going to eventually get to a point where we will have one of these
reshuffle
cards.
icons.
which will allow us to just reshuffle the
And then you
deck back up.
basically finish the action, take the deck, reshuffle it again, and I think there's a couple of those in the deck.
Yeah, so it really adds to that variability of the combat, and when you're going to start seeing some of those things. So we worked out that what the ratio of hits and misses were. But if you get that reshuffle at the wrong point or the right point,
Yeah.
it could help or
So
hinder you.
it does encourage just try and count the cards so you know which cards are where, and if you're quite good at that kind of thing, then you might be able to play the odds a bit more. So it's not like rolling a dice where it's random every time. If you start seeing lots of misses coming out, then you know there's some hits coming your way soon. So pick your time to attack them basically. And in terms of wounds, when you attack them, you'll basically take a wound marker and you place it on the card, and that'll track their wounds. And their wounds are essentially listed up here. This one's got 1 wound. And once you've and number of wounds equal to their wound points, you take it off the board. Take the token off the board as well, which also counts as the location of where the monster actually is, so you know where it is on the board.
And then when all that's done, you move on to the end of cycle phase. Now, here things, I'm just going to term it hazards happen. And things are not necessarily going to go your way where things might be spreading around the ship. You may have got a little bit too handy with a certain liquid propelled weapon, and that might have got a bit out of hand. But we'll leave you to discover some of those as you go through. When we come back round to looking at the scenarios, obviously this is set up for the very first prologue scenario. We've tried not to obviously spoil that for obvious reasons. We want you to experience that as you go through the game. But here you'll see we've started by setting up a few of the tokens. You've got your main sort of character standees down here, and some of the icons that you're going to go through. The main objective of the very, very, very first scenario is to get through into this room. So some of the ship will be blocked off. But you will start to develop certain extra abilities. And I mentioned earlier vents. So you'll notice you've got these vents up on the top. In the very first scenario, you don't know about the vents. You're not really bothered about the vents. You're just going to move about the ship. As you go through some of the additional scenarios, there is going to be sort of things opening up for you, and you're going to be able to do certain things where you're going to be looking at things in the bridge. You're going to be looking at certain rooms that are going to help you achieve some of those objectives. And in regards to those objectives, you will get some of those at the beginning of the scenario, maybe some of them through the middle, or if you're doing a basic standalone game, because you do have the option to do that, you'll be picking a few random ones to see and test your meta, whether you want just one objective that's going to be putting you on a clock, or whether you want multiples.
The full game has got a series of objective cards which you will basically sort of randomly pick. In the scenarios, these are given to you which ones to pick and place there. The intent is to finish the objective by meeting the objective criteria. Once you've done that, essentially you've solved that part of the game, and the game finishes. Yep, so that's it. And sometimes they'll trigger other things happening as well.
And each of these objectives are going to be on the sort of the countdown time of the round tracker down here, and the highest counter is going to be what triggers those nasties acting. But you might have multiples of those out, so it's going to raise the stress levels, the things you've got to deal with. Do you go and deal with this thing because it's easier, or do you go and deal with this thing because it's going to happen sooner?
Yeah.
And you may have reasons to ignore certain things, or reasons to target certain things. And that brings us on to what I mentioned earlier, which was treachery. As all good sci-fi tropes have, there's always somebody in the midst that are working towards their own agenda. And you've got these agendas that are available to you, and they will come out through the scenario. And whilst I said I'm not going to spoil too much, I think these are a key part of the sort of, not the end game, but as you go through through the campaign. And part of that is going to be around having your own secret objective that you've got, that you're working towards, which might align with everybody else's.
It might, yeah.
It might align with the ships. It might align with the companies. And you've really got to try and balance that against completing those objectives. Because, again, if the objective isn't in your favour, but it's going to end the game sooner, you might want to chip in and help out. But actually, if that objective is going to satisfy your goal, you might want to push on. And these cover all sorts of those sort of sci-fi tropes and things from your favourite sci-fi cult films. So they're in there for that. But the game's going to come in a couple of different editions, and you may have seen, obviously, the cardboard standees and the cardboard tokens, but there's going to be some of these acrylic tokens that you're going to be able to get, I think, in the deluxe edition.
Yes, yeah. So the base game comes with cardboard standees, the front half of the ship that you've seen here, and the 6 crew. And the deluxe one, you get the acrylic version of the standees. You get the back of the ship, which gives you some more play area to play with, and I presume maybe some different kind of objectives as well. I think you'll get there's several different nasties that are available. There's some Xenos, like bug things. There's a hunter, which tries to hunt you down using remote control drones. And then there's a robot who's trying to get one of the objectives, and you basically have to keep out of his way, or if you're carrying the objective, try and run away from him.
So a lot of different variability in that play. Obviously, looking into that campaign is going to be really good because you're going to be following that sort of story all the way through. But it does have that option to just shuffle and play into any of those sort of availables. And if you really wanted to, take on all of the big nasties all at the same time.
It does have that option, yeah.
Probably wouldn't recommend it.
No.
Once again, obviously, we will say that this is a prototype copy, so just bear that in mind when you are looking at that. Check out the link to the campaign in the description below, which will obviously take you to the campaign and see what's going on with that, what's going to be changing, and some things that are going to be deliverable. But if you really like what that's going on, do consider giving it back. Check out the other videos that we do on the channel, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.
Goodbye.